October, and all the scary movies are out. In my last podcast, I share a few ghost stories, but we're not stopping there. Hi, I'm Gabrielle Burchak, the host of Math, Science, History. I'm an author with a background in math, science, and journalism. And by the time you're done listening to today's podcast, you'll hear my ghost story. And you'll also learn some theories as to why we think we see and hear ghosts. In the year 415, the infamous philosopher and mathematician Hypatia of Alexandria, Egypt, was savagely murdered by church monks. This murder shocked the Roman community and its government leaders. Hypatia was known far and wide as a respected philosopher, mathematician, government advisor, and a professor. Hypatia, The Sum of Her Life, is a book that I wrote that looks not just at the circumstances surrounding her death, but also at the sum of her entire life. I weave in the details of her education, disciples, Neoplatonic philosophies, female contemporaries, and the many mathematics that she wrote and taught about. There is truly more to Hypatia's life than her death. Hypatia, The Sum of Her Life, written by me, Gabrielle Burchak, is now on sale on Amazon. Buy your copy today. The idea of a restless spirit trapped in a house, seeking closure, is a theme that resonates across cultures and generations. But what makes these stories so compelling? Is it the possibility of encountering the unknown, or is something more profound, even psychological, at play? Fast forward to the 20th century, where we can dive deep into the world of hauntings available on the interwebs. For instance, there is the story of a 3-year-old from Dayton, Ohio, who saw a cemetery filled with grandmas standing around looking at the ground. He told his dad that they were all paused, a term he learned when his dad had to pause the cartoons for lunch and dinner. And there's the story of the Stanley Hotel in Estes Park. The Stanley Hotel was used as the premise for The Shining. Note, I said the premise because the exterior of the hotel in the movie is actually the Overlook Hotel in Oregon, and the interior was a set built at the Elstree Studios in England. Growing up in Colorado, I have often been to the Stanley Hotel, and it's beautiful. In April 2016, Henry Yaw, the spokesman for the Children's Museum in Houston, visited and stayed at the Stanley Hotel with a friend. He took many photos. When Henry and his friend left the next day, he noticed something as he was going through his photos. He captured a person at the top of the staircase, even though he made sure the area was void of people before he took the picture. He posted it on Instagram, joking that he thought he captured a ghost. It's a very convincing photo of what looks like to me a woman dressed in Victorian clothing standing at the top of the staircase. I will place the Instagram shot on my website at mathsciencehistory.com, where you can see it. Oh, hey, and by the way, you know the next few lines. While you're there, be sure to click on that coffee button and buy me a cup of coffee, because every cup of coffee that you buy, and I'm serious, it helps me keep my podcast up and running. They really do. It doesn't have to be a large cup of coffee. It can even be a small donation. But they all help significantly. As for apparitions, here's my story. My dad grew up in Crabtree, Luxor, Pennsylvania, and often talked about his godmother, Mrs. Perroch, who lived nearby. According to my dad, she had a remarkable and accurate sixth sense. She knew when people, including herself, were going to die. My dad also shared fond memories of playing at the Perroch's farm, such as when he and his friends raised a corner of the barn with a car jack. Someone let go of the handle on the jack. It came up and it hit my dad in the jaw, causing him to bite a hole in his tongue. He used to tell the story with a big laugh and show us all the hole in his tongue, and it was really gross. My dad had a lot of great Luxor stories about the whole neighborhood, including the Forbes, whom one of the streets was named after. When I lived briefly in Virginia, my parents visited for the summer. As a treat, my husband and I went on a road trip with our kids and my parents to Luxor, Pennsylvania, to see my dad's old stomping grounds. And it was so touching. We went to a little Italian restaurant where the owner sang to us in Italian. We walked over to a lake where my kids could play and catch fireflies, and we visited his childhood home. The owners even invited us in for lemonade. And as the day ended, my dad suggested we walk down a dirt road to see if the Perroch house was still there. The sun was setting as we walked, but all I saw was foliage. Since my dad was going blind, I guided him, describing what I saw. He had stories about all the landmarks, including when he and his brother saw a ghost through a window after Mr. Perroch died, even though the house was empty. Still, as we walked, all I could see was foliage. We had to return because it was getting late and I had to feed my kids. So, just as we were getting ready to return, we came around a bend, and down in a nook, I spotted what looked like a house with a large, dilapidated, sloping red roof in the front, surrounded by foliage. It was hard to see with the sun setting and all the plants. I described the house to my dad, and he was so elated. He choked up and said, "Gabby, that's it. That's the old Perroch house." As the sun set, I suggested that Joe, my husband, return early the following day and take photos of the house before we drove back to Virginia. The next morning at sunrise, Joe drove to the area by himself but couldn't take the car down into the dirt road. So he parked and walked for about 30 minutes, unable to find anything. He called me, thinking he was lost, so I gave him directions to retrace the steps that Dad and I took. Joe followed them, even going into the nook and walking through the brush, but still found nothing. He searched for 90 minutes, but returned with no photos to show the house. So I questioned what I saw. The details matched my dad's memories. When I described the story to some of my friends, some thought I had seen a residual home that was no longer there. Well, I have another analogy. First, my husband could have gotten lost and have gone down the wrong path, which makes complete sense because he is often lost without me, literally and metaphorically. Sorry, Joe, if you're listening to this. It's true. Anyhow, second, the sun was setting, and I saw a red roof that was sloping down. A green plant can appear red during sunset because the sun's angle causes sunlight to scatter. At sunset, the atmosphere filters out shorter wavelengths of light, like blue and green, mainly leaving longer wavelengths like red and orange. This redder light reflects off the plant, giving it a reddish tint, even though the plant is still green. It's an optical effect, much like how so many of us Los Angelinos see a red sky when there are fires in the area. As for the details of the house, in addition to the trick of light, my unconscious memories from when I was a kid must have crept into my description of the house. So, while on that incredibly special walk with my dad, I thought I saw something that was really just a trick of the light and a jumble of precious emotions. Optical illusions are often one of the many reasons why people think they see ghosts, when, in fact, the sight of the ghost is connected to lighting conditions. As I noted before, optical illusions are caused by refraction, a bending of light, or even reflection that can create the appearance of figures or shapes. For example, light from a window can bounce off surfaces or bend in ways that create ghostly images. There is also a mathematical theory that describes geometric optics called the Snell-Descartes law, named after René Descartes and Dutch astronomer Willebrord Snellius. Yes, that's his real name. Another type of optical illusion that doesn't involve light is called pareidolia, also known as pattern recognition. It's when people see faces or figures in random patterns, like mist, shadows, or reflections, which they might interpret as ghosts. Pareidolia is a psychological phenomenon in which the brain detects familiar patterns, especially in faces. It's a function of the brain's pattern recognition system, which can be explained using probability and neural network theory principles. Pattern recognition algorithms derived from mathematical models can simulate how the brain assigns meaning to ambiguous or random patterns. Some people will say that they think there is a ghost in the room because they felt a sudden drop in temperature. These are often called cold spots, but these cold spots result from air drafts or thermodynamic imbalances in the environment, like heat moving from one place to another in a confined space. This is why people are likely to feel cold spots in decaying homes, because there's little or no insulation. So, These cold spots can be attributed to the laws of thermodynamics, which explain how energy moves through the air or even through materials, which can cause localized cooling. Also, sometimes people think they hear ghosts, which can be attributed to many practical factors like friction, which I mentioned in my recent podcast on tribology. The reports of hearing unexplained footsteps or creaking sounds in old houses are often caused by the expansion and contraction of wooden floorboards due to changes in temperature or humidity. As the wood expands and rubs against nails or other wood, friction can create creaking sounds that seem like footsteps. Hearing doors opening or closing is common paranormal claim. This can often be explained by frictional forces, such as when a door is slightly uneven or poorly hinged. Changes in air pressures, drafts, or vibrations can cause the door to move if the friction holding it in place is low, making it seem like a ghost is responsible. Or, in some houses, some might say there is a ghost holding the door closed, when it could be a cracked foundation and the house is settled, making it harder to push the door open or closed. Seeing furniture move can often be attributed to uneven legs, slight tilts on the floor, or a smooth or slippery surface. These factors can cause the furniture to move slightly over time. Many ghostly sounds can be explained by scientific, psychological, and environmental factors. Much like pareidolia causes us to see things that aren't there, auditory pareidolia also causes us to hear sounds that aren't what we think they are. Infrasound, which is sound at frequencies below 20 hertz, which is below the human hearing range, can cause feelings of discomfort, anxiety, and even hallucinations. People experience the physics of resonance, which is when certain frequencies resonate with human organs, creating sensations that might be interpreted as supernatural. Similarly, electromagnetic EMFs can affect the brain, especially the temporal lobes, causing auditory hallucinations or strange sensations that might be interpreted as ghostly encounters. It's fascinating how EMFs can really screw with our brains. Variations in electromagnetic fields, particularly from wiring or nearby electrical devices, can cause sensations of being watched. Exceedingly high EMF exposure can affect brain activity, which can lead to hallucinations or odd perceptions. Math can be used to predict the effect of EMF fluctuations, particularly Maxwell Heaviside equations, named after James Clerk Maxwell and Oliver Heaviside, which govern the behavior of electric and magnetic fields. Environmental factors also play a role. Echoes and sounds traveling through walls or floors can distort or delay ordinary sounds like footsteps or distant conversations, making them seem untraceable or supernatural. White noise from fans or air conditioning units can contain random sounds that the brain interprets as whispers or voices. Psychological factors often enhance these experiences as well. Stress, anxiety, and suggestibility can heighten a person's sensitivity to sound, making them more likely to perceive ordinary noises as paranormal. In a state of heightened fear or expectation, even the creak of a floorboard can be interpreted as a ghostly experience. Similarly, hypnagogia, a symptom of narcolepsy, or sleep paralysis, which is a state in which a person is partially awake but unable to move, can cause vivid auditory and visual hallucinations, often interpreted as encounters with spirits. Tinnitus, which causes phantom ringing or buzzing in the ears, often from going to loud concerts or blasting your earbuds or speakers. Tinnitus can sometimes be perceived as ghostly whispers or voices in quiet, eerie environments. Finally, visits from apparitions may help us find closure. For myself, after my dad passed away, I still have undeniable moments when I know that he is with me. All these factors work together to explain why people might think they hear, see, or feel ghosts, with the brain interpreting environmental stimuli in ways that align with the expectations of the supernatural. Many ghostly phenomena can be explained using principles of physics and mathematics, offering a scientific perspective on what might initially seem supernatural. These explanations show how applying physics and math can demystify ghostly phenomena, transforming what appears supernatural into scientifically understandable events. The thing about ghosts and apparitions is that we cannot see them, but we can sense that we can feel them. But because we can't see them, how can we believe that they exist? Sometimes the things that frighten us and fill us with a sense of fear cannot be found in tangible objects. And sometimes that fear is so immense that we feel crippled. But the same could be true for the feeling of love. The things that make us happy and fill us with a sense of love cannot be defined through tangible objects or measured amounts. We cannot see love, but we can certainly feel it. And sometimes that love is so immense that we feel safe, secure, and validated. So, when we sense the presence of a loved one who has passed, there is no sense of fear, but rather a sense of indisputable love. Who's to say that the apparitions we think we see or feel are there? In my opinion, only you. Because no doubt, the love you feel for their presence and for being in their world and having them in your world can't be disputed either. On this planet and in the universe, there is love. And as we head into the holidays, may you feel the presence of your past loved ones so much that your hearts are full. May you know that you are loved and that there is nothing worth fearing. May you use that to fill you with the strength and the courage to seize it every day and make it your most memorable day and wonderful life. And with that being said, my friends, carpe diem. Thank you for joining me at Math Science History. Please remember to subscribe to the show. Also, if you could please leave a rating or a review, it would be really appreciated. Because those ratings and reviews really do help to increase my listenership, which help to get me more sponsors, which help me keep the podcast up and running. If you want to learn more about the history of math and science, please visit me at mathsciencehistory.com. If you like what you're listening to, and if you like what you're reading, please feel free to click on that coffee button and buy me a cup of coffee. Every cup of coffee that you buy helps me pay for the expenses that go into making this podcast. Also, if you're interested in leaving me a comment or chatting with me, you can always find me on your preferred social media platform, including X, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, Goodreads, TikTok, Threads, etc., etc., etc. Just go to Google and search for Gabrielle Burchak. You can find me everywhere. Until next time, carpe diem.